UKMotorTalk.
Well, hello everyone, this is UKMotorTalk. I'm Mike, hello.
Hello, you're back. This is the first time we've seen you this year, or heard from you this year, isn't it?
Well, don't tell anyone, but I'm still in my bedroom.
Fair enough. I'm Jim.
I'm Dave. Hello everyone, and Happy New Year, Mr. Gates. It's been the first time I have seen your fizzog on the screen, so anything fun happening, or is it all just situation normal?
Absolutely not. Everything is wonderful. We've had all the various range of diseases. I started an OnlyFans, that's going well. And I'd like to say thank you to all of the people that have subscribed to us and people who left comments, particularly Robert Branton9311 on that note. So there you go. Thank you. That's just for you.
Is this on OnlyFans or is this on our general socials? Sorry.
I can't say for GDPR reasons.
Both. Who knows? Okay.
But it's lovely to see your faces. And I have done something. It is lovely to see your faces. And I have done something. I've decided to do a resto mod type mod and fit Apple CarPlay into the Onion, which I thought, I haven't quite done it yet, but I'm getting there.
Sacrilege, surely.
No. Because
actually, no, not at all. It's very, very worthwhile. And
I've got an idea. So underneath the sort of central stack in my car, where you've got the stereo and then you've got the ashtray, which I had to explain to my kids what an ashtray was because they had no idea what it was or why it would be in a car. I thought it was a very weird idea. And then directly beneath that, there's like a tape deck, which is quite tall. Imagine like the size of your iPhone. Looking at it now, it's that tall. So what I've done is I've got a friend who's 3D printing me a new surround, and it's you can buy a CarPlay screens, it turns out these days, for about 50 quid. I think I mentioned this in the podcast just before Christmas, actually. It was on my Christmas list, and I got that. And it's going to slide out. So you take the tapes out, you can slide the screen out so you can use it when you're going to places. So you can listen to fantastic podcasts that, of course, you should definitely subscribe to. And then you can be able to use what you need to use, your maps, whatever, push it away when you get to a show or you want the car to look retro again. And as soon as the car powers down, turns off. Seems like a reasonable idea.
An absolutely great idea, but I think it's it's almost the mirror image of what we used to do when we were young at college, wasn't it? Because we were flicking through a few classified car ads the other day, and a few older cars cropped up, and how much money they go for, and then how much a relative shed goes for these days. But it's I think in the old day, when you were at college, you go out and spend 300 quid on a car, and then probably spend, I don't know, £1,000 on the stereo for it, wouldn't you? Whereas now it's the other way. It's like the minimum you can spend on a shed of a car is £1,000, but you can get a stereo for 50 quid. So actually, is it the same? Is it a car including a flash stereo that owes you 1,500 quid? It's okay, the stereo's less and the car's more, but hey, it all balances out, doesn't it?
Well, that sort of brings back very happy memories of ye olden days when I remember when I started driving. We used to go to this thing up in Putney. It was like a police auction where they used to sell off all the stuff that had been nicked and the stuff that the insurance companies had already paid out for. And there's all these mostly car radios in those days. And I actually had in my... Was it the Escort? No, yeah, I can't remember. But in one of my cars, I had a Ford standard fit FM, AM cassette playing thing, the one that was meant to be paired up with the joystick, so you could never balance the sound properly. But other than that, it worked great. Oh, yeah. They were great. They were really, really good. Anyway, I had one of them. But I also had a Trio. Now, Trio was the name of Kenwood before it became Kenwood. I had a Trio pull-out stereo, and it was really cool. And this dates things so much. Pull-out stereos were the thing, because obviously they were so easily nicked. You had a cage that the thing slotted into, and then your stereo hooked up to it with all the connectors on the back, and it worked a treat. And then obviously we moved on to removable front panels, and then removable bits of front panels until I think it was Ford again, wasn't it? Who had just the buttons for the presets.
That's it. The bits people used to nick.
We still got one of those on the top of the cupboard at work. So we've been having a bit of a clear out and a sort out of some old paperwork at work. So we've been a bit lax in having our annual clear out for probably the last 9 years, I would say, and also we sort of actually double check the criteria of how often we need to throw things away. So there's actually sort of 9 years worth of EFT receipts and things. So we're speaking to the shredding company on almost a daily basis, saying, "Yeah, can you send another 2 crates? Yeah, can you come and collect 2 crates and deliver 3 crates? How many crates can you fit on your lorry? Yes, that'll do. Bring them down as well."
These are literally a ton each, by the way.
Yeah, huge amounts of paperwork. You know, the mezzanine's going to change shape shape in a minute because of all the weight we've taken out of it. But our
take
building is super leggera, which is very nice. But
It'll be hovering.
I had a couple of realizations this week, and that I'm really old because I was I'd stacked up all the paperwork upstairs because I like to get stuck in, but I was getting one of the apprentices with much younger, nimbler knees than I possess to lug them all up and down the stairs for me, as you do. So that's my right as the boss. Apprentice, lift and carry. Get on with it. And he's carrying all these boxes of files down, so I'm flicking through the files, remembering the cars that have gone out, remembering the customers, etc. And I'm opening one up, and there's, in the old days we used to keep the tax discs in the folder. I was like, hey, I haven't seen one of those for a while, so I turned it around, showed it to the apprentice, and he went, what's that?
What's that?
I was like, it's a tax disc. What's a tax disc? I was like, so, well, in the old days, you used to go down the post office with your MOT certificate and a copy of your insurance and a cheque, which was like a bit of paper with some numbers and money written on it, and they give you a tax disc for a year. He was like, well, you just do it on the internet, don't you? So, all right, fair enough. And then towards the end of the conversation, I worked out because he was so young, I own items of clothing that are older than his, which makes me sound very, very, very old. But then we got onto the subject of floppy disks and computer equipment. He's like, oh yeah, floppy disks. Yeah, I learned about those in the history section of computer science. It's like, oh God, right, that's it. I'm definitely old. That's it. I'm feeling my age this week, it's fair to say.
I read it's a paper by a student, and they refer to, I think it was 1997 as the late 1900s.
Yes, I've started using that a lot as well. Or I say to people, oh yes, I bought that last millennia. Actually, yeah, that was 25 and a bit years ago now, wasn't it? So yes, there we go.
Well, it made me think, Mike, you sent me a very intriguing advert for a superannuated Fiat Uno that had been through the restoration process, and that was an H-Reg, an Uno Turbo H-Reg, just like the one I had, and when I had it, it was 4 years old. I had to do a bit of back counting, worked out that thing is 35 years old now, which is a terrifying prospect, and I thought it was old when mine was 4. So 31 years ago, Jesus.
I think it is all relative, though. I mean, it's when I first started driving, my car was probably 10 years old, and that seemed like a very, very, very old car. It was one of the oldest ones among my mates who were into cars. There was the odd one that was a bit older, the odd one that had a classic, but lots of them were just those couple of years newer. Mine was an E-Reg, so 98, and I started driving in 98, 99, something like that. So it was, that seemed to be knocking on at the time, whereas now 10 years old is not a lot for a car, really. It's it's on the new style of numbering of number plate, so it doesn't seem that old. And actually, you do still see more than a few XW Y-Reg cars of the old registration style floating around, if not older. So, yeah, it's all relative, isn't it? It does show the engineering's got slightly better over the years, but I do wonder about computers and technology and batteries and high voltage systems and bits and pieces like that, as these things brick themselves with the cost of the replacement ECU or battery make it not viable to carry on. But I think on the subject of writing off older cars or keeping older cars on the road, there's something sprung up in the MOT news this week, hasn't it?
There has. Well, there's lots of things actually that have sprung up in the MOT news. The first of which being that, and they've wanted to do this for some time, they wanted to fit cameras originally to be able to video or to be able to live stream effectively an MOT to make sure it's a genuine MOT and not a ghost MOT in inverted commas.
Was it live stream it, or was it pictures? Take a picture of the car on the ramp?
Yes, well, they've decided that filming, from a multitude of reasons, GDPR and bits and pieces, they think is probably not viable. The practicality of being able to do that in a business, and then the requirements.
The amount of data as well. How long do you have to keep that for, and how many teraflopper gigawatts it's of space would that take up? A lot, I'd be guessing.
Well, and you've also then got to allow a stream out of your business on your... There's all kinds of problems. Lots and lots of problems. So, the answer at the moment...
What if the MOT tester wants to be nude whilst carrying out the MOT test?
Well, I suppose you have to wear appropriate PPE. But anyway, we digress.
Steel toe caps?
I did go to a garage once where they insisted they wore hard hats, so I suppose that's kind of the same.
Anyway.
Yeah, so what they are trialling at the moment is taking a photo of the car on the ramp with the front or rear number plate, so you can prove that car is there having its MOT, and that be submitted with the MOT test.
Makes sense.
And they also, supposedly, want to be able to fail a car if it's not had a safety recall done. Now,
controversial.
We have worked in the industry for many years, and we can tell you that some vehicles, for example, may have many recalls. And generally speaking, cars when they're a year to maybe 3 years old tend to go to the dealers, which means the dealers tend to pick them up and they tend to get done.
Yes.
The problem is when they then fall out of the network, when they get some point usually between 4 and 7 years old, well, no one really checks to see if they do need a recall. And all of a sudden, what's happened? You're going to pitch up for an MOT test and, oh goodness, your car's failed the MOT. Why? Because it should have had a recall, because the back wheel might fall off, axle might fall off, you might get a hole in the side of the engine, whatever it might be. So, I'm sorry, we can't let you take your car. That's going to be awkward.
It's going to be very awkward, but I mean, I can kind of see the point in this. I mean, it becomes a logistical nightmare to keep up with these things, because how does the manufacturer will write to the last registered owner, keeper of the car? Well, the last registered owner or keeper of the car that the manufacturer knows about, of course. If I buy no, I can't say. If I bought a BMW brand new and then sold it privately to you, David, 3 years later, but don't bother to tell BMW because it's none of BMW's business, and despite the fact they want a subscription to turn on the hardware that I've bought, anyway, it passes to your ownership and custodianship and off you go. So BMW are none the wiser. I don't need to tell BMW, so how do they contact you about the recall? They don't. It's
via the DVLA is the answer.
Well, that's how it's going to have to be, isn't it? They're the central information holder.
Yes.
I can't help but think there's got to be some sort of grace period here, because there are going to be people who are going to be turning up going, well, I didn't know anything about that. People who've never been near the main dealer. I think there's got to be some common sense in this going, yes, this will need doing, but we'll give you, 3 months to get it sorted out, come back and we'll tick that off. Otherwise, from that point on, your MOT becomes invalid.
You definitely can't present it for an MOT with that outstanding recall twice. I certainly think that's very sensible. So they do it through DVLA. So in theory, is that how it works, is it? The manufacturer does the recall through DVLA information rather than their own information. So in theory, there's no reason at all that should go wrong. However, in my experience of working at a car dealership that as a company has owned lots of cars for demonstration purposes, the number of times we have sold a vehicle, and I know for a fact that it has gone through with DVLA because I keep my little spreadsheet and I tick off and mark them when I've had the little slip from DVLA saying you're no longer the registered keeper, and I can take them off the insurance because I keep all my records up to date, etc. Yet I still, from the manufacturer, get recalls. So something doesn't tie up somewhere. So things must go wrong. Or is that just an R manufacturer thing?
Well, stats fans, here we go. So according to the press release, more than 5 million cars are potentially affected because franchise dealers have lost contact with their owners. And in 2020... Yeah, but still, 5 million cars is a lot. In 2021 alone...
Well, you'd need a big car park, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not actually too bad, is it? Or is it?
No,
it's
I
more
think
than we
it
could cope with in a week, but depends what the recall is, I suppose.
In 2021 alone, more than 2.7 million cars were recalled, with less than 800,000 of those rectified by the dealer.
Oh, that's not good, is it?
No.
That's not a good percentage, bearing in mind that the information that DVLA holds should be reasonably accurate.
Yeah. So that's an issue. But how many people just get those letters and ignore them? You can't force someone to bring their car in.
There is a lot of that. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to, well, what is the recall? If the recall is the rear wheel could fall off, well, that's probably quite important, so you should get it done. If the recall is, something daft, like a software update to stop the sat-nav screen going blank, should that be an MOT failure? Not really.
Safety critical, surely.
Yeah, safety critical
yes.
ones, because there's urgent action safety recall notice concerning your vehicle, blah, 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 blah. And actually, it's not that big a deal. It's just to have a software update or something like that. So I would say probably not. But if the recall is, we found a problem and where in certain cases the steering column might shear off, yes, get that fixed. And actually, you don't want that car roaming around without having had that recall done. So actually, in a way, I think it is right. But yeah, there's got to be a balance, and there's got to be a grace period, because, you know, you can imagine the phone calls to every franchise dealership the following morning. Oh, I've got a such and such car. It's failed the MOT. I've got 4 outstanding recalls, 2 outstanding recalls, whatever it is. And if it's any sort of recall that involves parts, well, you've then got the delays of getting the parts there. Any manufacturer will say, well, okay, let's send out this recall. How many parts have we got? We'll drip feed them in. We'll do whatever. But if all of a sudden, every day, there's more and more demand for that recall, it could easily happen in big numbers, certainly if you've had an end-of-month raft of registrations to hit a target or whatever it is. You know, there'd be some big lumps in the road to consider when you're rolling this out. So, yeah, it can't be an overnight change. But if there's a safety recall, then it's, the wheel's going to fall off. You got to get it fixed. Simple as that.
Well, again, it's common sense, isn't it? Surely they could treat it as an advisory. You know, advisory is, by the next time you have an MOT, this could have become a major problem. We strongly recommend you get it done. But, you know, a grace period, I think, is the minimum they should be doing, rather than just well, there you go, that thing's impounded, you're going to have to get the bus home. That's a little bit unfair on everyone concerned. The people that are going to have to do the work, the people that order the parts, and the people that are ending up Shanks's pony because all of a sudden their car's locked away in a dealership that they'd had no clue about half an hour before.
And again, if you got your lead time, you know, we are in the enviable position of being very, 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 very busy at the moment. But if we suddenly start getting a load of random calls from people that have never used us before because they've got an urgent recall, you know, but we're not fitting them in tomorrow, let's put it that way. It could be, and again, with parts delays, it could be a month, it could be 6 weeks before we look at the car. Sorry, but that is what it is. You know, if the bit's on back order, what do you do?
It's a sudden
That's
rush.
not just an R franchise problem. You know, JLR has had some very well publicised parts supply issues. Where do you go with all of that? I mean, again, I think their workshop capacity issues continue. A friend's mother's other half was trying to book his JLR vehicle in the other day, and he'd booked it in good time, but was going to be 2 months and 4,000 miles over the service interval by the time they could fit him in, despite the fact he was trying to book it about 3 months in advance anyway. And it was just not just because of how busy they were, and that's just for routine service work that he was paying for. So you'd think, well, that's probably the bread and butter type stuff that they want to get in, never mind about the urgent action recalls from cars they've never seen before and probably will never see again. That's the flip side of this. From a main dealer point of view, they'll do the recall, but there won't be any further work for it. So there's the potential for this to be a cluster, without a shadow of a doubt. And
just some more stats on this, actually. So there's just shy of 34 million cars on the road in the UK, and about a third of the cars on the road are over 12 years old. So there's quite
Hang on, only 35 million?
Apparently so.
There's how many people in the UK?
About 60-something. Is it 66? I can't remember now.
So roughly 1 in 2 own a car. So on the basis of the fact that Gates owns 3,475 cars, how do you find it so hard to park in your road? Because statistically speaking, nobody else in your road should own a car.
Well, that's a good point. There are a few people that don't, I suppose. But nevertheless, it's a big percentage of cars that potentially have dropped out of various different manufacturer dealer networks, isn't it? Let's face it.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I'm all one for heading outside of the franchise if it's more suitable, more economical, you get better service.
It's a specialist or something, maybe. Yeah.
You know, whatever it happens to be, there's arguments both for and against a franchised or main or manufacturer associated dealer, isn't there? I think it all just depends on the individual dealership and the people that are there. If you like them, get on with it. If you don't, go somewhere else. And you can have friendly main dealers and friendly franchise dealers and friendly independents and unfriendly main dealers, franchise dealers and independents. It's all horses for courses, isn't it? But yeah, it's tricky one, but I suppose, is it just if you do get one of these letters, do pay attention to it, because you get sent this letter for a reason, in that there is an urgent safety related recall for your vehicle, and you should phone a dealership and get it booked in and get it done. And of course, these are free as well, aren't they? It's not like, you have an urgent action safety recall and by the way, it's £999 at retail price, get it booked in. These are all free. These are all done at the behest of the manufacturers, so there's no cost other than maybe a bit of time or a bit of inconvenience, or just being a grown-up and looking after your own vehicle. So yeah, it's not like there's a bill at the end of it. So yeah, book it in and get it done. But if you're in any doubt, obviously you should get written to by the manufacturer or somebody similar, so don't ignore these letters. But if you do just want to double check if something's crossed over, here's some very useful consumer advice.
And that is that if you go and check your MOT on the government website, you can tap in your registration number and it will tell you if there's an outstanding recall. So you can see if you do have anything outstanding for your car. So pop into your local Google, type in there MOT check, and it'll come up with the Gov website and you can see from there. It's also worth noting that a lot of manufacturers, a lot of dealers, should I say, a lot of franchise dealers will offer something like a free visual health check. Now they'll do this, look around the car and identify things that need changing, because of course there is a potential for them to earn some money out of doing it if they do spot something that needs doing. But it'll also help you if there's something that they spot.
Just out of interest, and I know that was a very nice out there, but I'm just going to ruin it. Is there an upper limit on the age of a car that can be recalled? Is there any point at which the manufacturers go, oh, sod this, can't be bothered? What's the point? No one's driving them anymore.
No, we had a 2007 Focus recalled, actually, I think. I seem to remember, for rear frame bolts.
There's no limit on time, and in fact, there's the odd... there's a couple of levels. There's a recall, which is bring it back, we will fix a thing, whether it's changing something, checking something, adjusting something, whatever it is. So some of these recalls can be as daft as, we've noticed on occasion some water ingress may occur here, so it's something as simple as taking the ECU off, turning it upside down and bolting it back on again, so the plug is facing down, not facing up. So if you open the bonnet in the rain, the water doesn't run into the plug. Stuff like that. It's, very rare it can happen, but it can also be stuff like, we notice the hub might become detached, or the airbag might go off suddenly, as that's happened with many manufacturers with Takata. But there's some sort of FSAs, as they're known, which are, you check them every year, and it's check it every year. There's certain FSAs that will appear on vehicles. They could be 100 years old, and every year it'll say, just check this and make sure it's okay. But it's really no more than a sensible mechanic would check anyway. But no, you can have
usually
all
chargeable, those. So just as a point,
yes,
field service actions, as they are, FSAs, are things where manufacturers have noticed these particular faults or problems, and quite often they're useful for helping diagnose apparently there's no such thing as a common fault, but a fault that you might have seen more than once. They are useful for these things.
Sir.
But yes, but field service actions are normally chargeable as opposed to recalls, which aren't. There we go.
Yeah, that's true. But no, we've seen old cars. I mean, I'll say the possibility of discovering one of these issues and it becoming urgent enough to be a recall, that normally happens fairly on in the car's life. They'll notice one or two incidents of something, so they then investigate the next lot and off they go. But yeah, I think, like I say, there was one on a 2007 Focus, so that's that's nearly 20 years old. I'm old, and can be any age really. I don't think we've recalled anything or had a recall to do on anything from the late 1900s, have we? Or 1999, as it was known.
I was going to say, there's somebody sitting there waiting for a telegram from the Hispano-Suiza company. We regret to inform you that the trunnion bearings on your 1911 vehicle have not recently been changed. Is there any chance you may take it to your favoured mechanic, or have your chauffeur do the delivery, and we will attend to it forthwith? That's very interesting.
You must arrange this post haste.
So please reply to Whitehall 321.
But this suddenly raises another question, doesn't it? So if there's a recall related, and as we've seen, with modified vehicles or resto mod vehicles and things like that, let's just say, for example, that Ford did somehow discover there was an issue with the engine plonked into Mike's Orion. If that had a recall, an urgent safety recall, well, how do we do that? Because the engine isn't there anymore. Do you have to go and fish the engine out of the bin or wherever it is, and we do the recall on that engine and then put the engine back in the bin? I don't know, because there will be certain components that will have been changed. So how does that work?
Well, that relies on certain people telling certain other people in authority that certain modifications have been done to certain vehicles, doesn't it? And is that then going to be a VIN number thing? Is it going to be a non-matching numbers engine chassis? God almighty, that's just going to get into a whole world of pain, isn't it?
Yeah, it raises all sorts of questions. So if you have a Takata airbag recall, but you've, if you've taken the airbags out of the car, what if you've changed the airbag yourself to a different one? So there is no Takata airbag to recall anymore. Well, so all these sort of things, it's a question, isn't it?
It's probably the exception, but yeah, the point is absolutely valid because so many things are now interchangeable, and so many people are resto modding in this electronic age where you can make things talk to things, and engines are easily swappable, and new harnesses are available, and you can get. There's electronic ways of checking, aren't there? You can interrogate an engine management thing each time the car goes into a dealer and you go, hang on a minute, that's flagged up as being an engine with this vehicle was originally fitted with X, Y, and Z, therefore these parts are likely to be at question. But again, it's just a whole new layer of hassle, isn't it? Electronic red tape.
Well, there is probably one relatively famous recall, which perhaps we should mention before we do move on, and that is if you had a Takata airbag fitted. Now, these are fitted largely to Toyota vehicles, but also to a number of manufacturers, including Ford and goodness knows, many, many of them. Long story short, the metal that was in the airbag was either not the correct thickness or broke down, or whatever it was, but the net result was, if the airbag deployed, it went off like a claymore and fired pieces of shrapnel straight into your face.
Which, if you're already having a car crash bad enough to set off the driver's airbag, you're not having the best of days, are you? Let alone with a claymore going off in your face. I mean,
insult to injury.
It's just an extra kick in the teeth, isn't it? Literally.
And these were cars of all different ages. I seem to remember doing something like a 2005 Mustang, and I think similar age or ever so slightly newer Priuses were also included. So unless you want to end up with a face like Zhao off of Die Another Day, or whatever it was, the James Bond film, stuffed with bits of metal and glass as opposed to diamonds, then I would strongly suggest the likes of that were attended to.
So yes, do hop on the Gov website and share your views with the government, such as they are, whilst you're at it, but we won't get into that. But do also check your MOT history and see how you're looking.
I feel that we've digressed here in the news stage quite early on, but I do want to know something, Dave. Have you been arrested yet?
No, I have not been arrested, so it seems like somewhere along the line, either the powers that be have really taken their eyes off the ball, or finally the people in the Warwickshire Camera Safety Partnership have taken me out of their sights because I told them that it wasn't me that was driving through their speed safety zones at speeds other than in accordance with the posted limits. I finally got my letter, albeit an electronic one, which wasn't ideal, telling me that yes, well, we're really sorry. Yes, actually, we made a bit of a mistake there, and somebody can't read.
Whoa. Hang on. When you say it wasn't you driving through it wasn't even your car. It wasn't even, let's be honest, that close.
Yes, in case you missed it.
And it wasn't even the same number plate or the same car, so let alone not you. And it was wrong on so many levels, wasn't it?
Well, they didn't do badly. They got the right manufacturer, and they got probably about 90% of the number plate right, but the vital missing ingredient, the final digit on the plate, was very much not the correct one, which again could be misinterpreted by someone who was either blind or an AI camera reading machine that was having a bad day. But it was, again, as I've moaned and whined about first world problems over the last few weeks, it did put me to a lot of hassle and stress of having to prove to them that no, it wasn't me that was driving through there, and the car in question was a different model, a different colour, and it wasn't me or anyone connected to me, i.e. it wasn't my car. I could have been me driving that car, but it wasn't me driving that car. I had nothing to do with it.
Highly unlikely, isn't it?
No, I wouldn't just pop up to Stratford-upon Avon for a day just to do some speeding and then come back. Stratford-on-Avon is a long way away. I mean, Stratford in East London is a fair distance, and I wouldn't go there either.
It's a bit of a trek, isn't it?
It is. I mean, lovely though it is, and I have been up there, but I wouldn't go up there specifically just to go and trigger a speed camera and come back and say, no, it wasn't me. So, no, wasn't me. I did eventually, after, prodding, and I did ask them at the end of last year, could I have in writing, which to me as an old person means, could I have a letter, please, a physical through the post thing? Could I have that in writing just so that if any problems arise in the future wherein one of the boys in blue from any of the constabularies in the nation decides they want to pull me over for unresolved issues, I can whip this out, letter, and say, no, it wasn't me, Your Honour. But I heard nothing, so I sort of waited a couple of months. I thought that's probably a good amount of time, and said, I asked you for a letter saying it wasn't me. Could I have said letter saying it wasn't me? And I go, oh, we've sent you one. No, you haven't. You haven't sent me a letter. And I looked through the emails as well. No, there's nothing. There's a thing saying, yes, sorry, disregard it. But I didn't get it in writing. Anyway, they sent me a specific email saying, please have this in writing. It wasn't you. So I've printed that off, and that's the next best thing. But as we all know, anything is changeable that's electronic generally, isn't it? I mean, you can still mess around with physical paper. Tipex is available, and cut and paste. Just ask Lee Harvey Oswald in his back garden with his gun. But I'm not saying I'm playing on that level. It's just a motoring offence that's nothing to do with me anyway. Anyway, I now have a letter that I've printed off that I will keep in my car, and if anybody stops me, I'll just go, read that. The end. Thank you, Warwickshire Camera Safety Partnership. That's that.
I mean, the effect this has clearly had on your mental health is I think you should be
staggering.
pursuing this. I think you should be putting in a claim for this because
it's just one of many
worrying,
things. This is just somewhere in the pile. It's just it's plenty more where that came from.
Well,
I'm probably over egging it. It was a pain in the yes, an absolute pain in the. But it's to say, first world problems in the grand scheme of things. I'm still here. I'm still driving the car. I'm still breathing. So no one's hurt. Someone else has got the ticket. Hey!
There was something in the news that I really, really did want to talk about. And that is because I've now reached the age at which I think I prefer, and I think I should tell I've done this for years, I've preferred the Alpina versions of BMWs to the M versions of BMWs. And we've suddenly got to a point now where, unfortunately, Alpina, which is owned by BMW, is not going to exist in the way it did. Now, if you're a petrol head, so of course you probably know what Alpina is, but just in case you don't, they generally take the SE version of a car or something similar, of a 3 Series, for example, fill it full of beautiful leather, and then they paint it a lovely colour, usually a green or blue, but other colours are available, of course, and tune it up so that it has sort of M-car power, but it's a much more subtle looking thing. And seeing as a lot of the M cars more recently have been all nostrils and less good looks, I have to say that the final car, ignoring the 8 Series version they've done, but the final cars that they're churning out, which are the B3 GT Tourings, oh God, that's a good looking car. Really good looking car.
I agree with you totally, but again, I'm not sure if this is the just coincidence with the fact that, I've got items of clothing older than people that I work with now, and that's just depressing. Is it an age thing? Are we actually turning into our parents? Are we actually getting older? Is it just the world changing around us? I mean, I think a sign of being old is shouting at everything and moaning about everything, which I seem to do a lot. So I can't quite work it out, but it's getting a thumbs up.
We've made a podcast of it, really.
Well. But it seems to have worked so far. But yeah, they just look that much more. Not understated, because those that know
classy.
Know, and if you do look at one, The only thing I would say is that on all the cars, that the wheels, are they just a bit fussy? Is it controversial to say the wheels are just a bit fussy?
No.
Take a long time to clean.
I was never a
wheels,
fan.
Really? See,
the turbine alloys have always been a bit. I mean, that's their signature, absolutely.
It is.
And don't get me wrong. And just looking at the pictures, they've gone for bronze accents on this last one. And as it happens, does seem to work. Does seem to work better, especially with the very dark sort of green that they've paired it with. I mean, I think
a green car with bronze wheels that
works. It's subtle.
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right saying that they're more the subtle choice, apart from the big splitter at the front that's got Alpina written in massive font all the way across. But apart from that, you're absolutely nailed. Yes, I've always preferred them to the M cars because they're just a bit more the thinking man's choice, personally.
You don't need to spec the stickers either. I think you can choose whether you have those or not. But the wheels, for me, in my mind, it was always a Dolphin Grey E30. With those wheels on Alpina rims.
Yeah,
man.
There's just too many spokes on them. But apart from that, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think there was that link to that competition one where you could win one, wasn't it? And the colour of it, as you say, was spectacular. It was just you looked at that, and that is all the car you ever need, and that is just the answer to the question. If anybody's here, you know about cars. What car should I buy? That. Just
That's
buy
everything.
that.
Yes.
That's everything. That's all you need. Oh, that's a lot of money. Got a house, haven't you? Yeah, sell it. Buy that.
Yes.
It's all the car you ever need. That's it. It's fine. If you can't, and actually, if you can't buy one of those, then just buy a normal 3 Series or 5 Series Touring with the biggest engine you can find and go with that. And that's it. That's just probably the most sensible advice you can give everyone, isn't it? But yes, I don't know. Is it a bit like the Porsche thing? As you get older, a Porsche looks. A 911 looks nicer and nicer and nicer as you get older. When I was younger, they were a bit, I don't want to say a bit bland, but a bit just sort of smooth and not a
leery
lot to
enough.
them. Whereas as I get older, I'll just look at one of those and think, yeah, I could have one of those. And just more and more and more, I look at a 911 and think, I mean, I've got no idea on there. It's a 996 911. Was it a 996 or is it a 911? No, it's a 999. It's a 911 997.2. So is it a 997.2? No, it's a 933.6. I get really confused with all of that, so I don't know. But all I know is whenever it comes out, the newest one, I think more and more and more, yes, that's what I want. So, yeah, I think you're
one of those.
Your your Alpina. I'm getting confused with a French manufacturer there. You could have an Alpina towing an Alpine to the track day, couldn't you? But an Alpina towing your 911 to the track day, that would be quite nice as well. That's the way to live, isn't it?
Well, yes, if you've got 90 grand, you can have one. One of my favourite things about this car is that Alpina have a long-standing agreement with BMW, which is that they won't be more powerful than the M versions. So the M3 is 523 horsepower. This is 522.
Excellent. But is this... I think I was sent a picture, or I saw a picture the other day, and it was, how do you measure a horsepower? And there was this picture of this horse. I mean, you could just see by the amount of steam coming out of its nostrils, it must have had a lung capacity of 728 litres, and this horse was at least twice as big as the human stood next to it. And the caption was, I'm fairly certain this is more than 1 horsepower. But you think, well, if you measure it in terms of those horses, do you measure it in terms of that, a little Shetland pony, or is it a Shire horse? They're both horses technically. So do they just use a bigger horse to measure the power, maybe?
Oh, it's something to do with the amount of time a horse takes to raise a bucket over a certain distance or something. There's an odd equation for it. And I remember trying to. Someone said, "Well, how do you explain torque then?" I said, "Oh, it's kind of like how much force you need to drag a horse in a direction in which it does not wish to be dragged." I don't know. How do you explain it? It's just impossible to explain. All I know is that's a lot and that's
power
good.
Is how hard the horse kicks you in the head. Torque is how far through the wall you go when the horse has kicked you in the head. Or the fence, should I say.
I don't know. There's an analogy here that we're going to get lost in. And all I can say is that we haven't got this right. So if you know how to explain this better, let us know in the various different comments wherever you're listening to us or watching us, or indeed write to us at UKMotorTalk, wherever we are.
Or indeed, if you own a massive horse and you want to set up a meeting in a field where we can get Mike to try and drag that horse in a direction in which it doesn't want to go, and we could sell videos of that for money, couldn't we? I think lots of people have paid to see that. I'd paid to see you being dragged around a field by a horse, so we could do that and raise some money, and let's donate the money to charity. There we are. So it's everybody can feel good about it.
We could donate the money to the air ambulance charity, because no doubt that's going to be required at some point in proceedings.
They probably need it. They probably need it. It's time to start giving back to the NHS, Mike. Right, what have we got coming up over the next couple of weeks? I think we've got the F1 season launch in a week's time. I think it's about the 18th coming up, isn't it?
Hmm.
The O2, although I'm confused with this. Season launch, livery launch, uniform launch. I don't really know what it is. I think we're going to see some pretty colours and some razzmatazz and probably a load of music artists I've never heard of, really. But there we go. But it's hey, it'll be a fun couple of hours watching all the liveries in one go. At least it'll be an easy way to digest all of that. It's weird in the run up to it. You can have a car launch, but not a livery launch. So I don't know. Don't really know. So I kind of think the car launch is both, isn't it? It should be the new car and the new livery, but last couple of years it's been the old car and the new livery and whatever else. So if you're not quite into F1 and following the news over the course of 2 or 3 weeks that the livery launches happen, or the car launches happen, then 2 hours it's probably better, isn't it? It's like a highlights reel.
I think probably that's what I would be tuning into, yes. Truth be told. Yeah, I mean, there have been some cracking liveries, and we've obviously talked about that many times before, but I would rather watch that than pick all the details out individually one by one, and what they reveal the car to show you the livery, and then the car that comes out isn't necessarily the car that they've shown with the livery on. It's all slightly confusing, and it's a bit of subterfuge going on.
Or it's a fake one, or it's a digital one. And they say, well, how do you know that? And it's like, well, if you look at this, like the lower suspension arms don't go anywhere, they just go into thin air. Oh yeah, we forgot to render that bottom bit, didn't we? Whoops. Oh well, never mind. But again, it's like, I think much as I'm a technological geek and I like looking at all the latest aerodynamic flicks and tricks and tips and whatever else, actually a lot of the time it's just about the pretty colours, isn't it? Because it can have the best aerodynamics in the world, but if the paint job's a bit horrible or boring, Red Bull, then it's not actually that exciting to look at, is it? Whereas if it's nice, pretty retro colours, then everybody seems to like it.
Well, that was always the thing I used to love, the launch of the car, which obviously meant the livery. Generally, the livery went with it. Apart from the times when people like McLaren would go, "Oh, have some orange. We're going to go old school with this one," and it'll be back to being grey and white and red, which was still a very pretty colourway. But then you thought, oh, why don't you just do that for real? Just have the courage of your convictions. Go with papaya orange. And now, obviously, orange is their colour post Ron Dennis era. But so maybe that was in the making. But to see the orange car at the launch and to see it sort of whizzing around doing the testing miles until they sprayed it the sponsors' colours, that was quite special. I used to quite like that. And I remember when Williams launched the Martini livery, that was pretty special, wasn't it? I was just living in the past, essentially, aren't I? So just bring us more retro liveries, and I'll be watching Formula One again before you know it.
Again, I think it's that actually this maybe gives a bit of scope for that. Does it give a bit of scope for a team to launch? Let's say Williams. Well, I think it said they're going to be ready with their car on the first shakedown's going to be Valentine's Day at Silverstone, and weirdly enough,
Romantic.
Emails from Silverstone about a romantic Valentine's getaway at Silverstone. Be trackside for Valentine's Day. So I'm not quite sure the missus would agree that's that romantic. But anyway, they'll have their launch of the actual car and the first shakedown very early on the 14th, in contrast to previous years. But actually, does this give them the opportunity to run that really Larry one-off special livery just for testing, a retro fag packet inspired livery which gets them lots of press and images and whatever else, maybe lets them run that as a heritage livery at Monaco or something like that, and then, you know, the livery launch is a livery launch, season launch is that, and it just gives a bit more press and column inches to every team for doing their own special thing, and allows a bit more scope that way. But again, let's say if it's something different, then let's try it and see what's what.
And who doesn't want a few extra inches this Valentine's Day? And I guess
on
that note, it's probably time for us to end this podcast before we head off-road, off-track, and get ourselves all muddy. I'd like to say goodbye, and thank you very much for listening to us, and thank you indeed for subscribing to us. So from me, Mike, it's goodbye.
From me, Jim, it's goodbye.
And from me, Dave, it's goodbye. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Take care. See you soon.
UKMotorTalk, a First Take Media production.